continue what you were saying, a private case has been submitted against a British citizen as a test case because the government is unwilling. And it's going to be in court very, very soon. And we'll see how that, based on the 18th. There was an article, I think last week or 2 weeks ago in The Guardian, and it's going to be in court in the next week or two. When Penny asked me to come and talk here, so I took this as an opportunity to sit and write some of my thoughts on it together with a close friend, Muna Haddad, and I'm just going to read to you my thoughts about the journalist and the law and what is going on. So Israel's killing of at least 225 Palestinian journalists since October 7th, 2023, briefly attracted international attention after it was calculated that more journalists have died in Gaza than in the US Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, including the conflicts in Cambodia and Laos, the wars in Yugoslavia in the 1990s and 2000s, and the post-9/11 war in Afghanistan combined. As part of its efforts to eliminate witnesses and control the narrative, Israel, as one commentator notes, transformed Gaza into journalism's graveyard. It has done so through the repeated use of drones and planes to hunt down media workers from afar, such as when it targeted, Al Jazeera reported, Anas al-Sharif, together with Mohammed Greiki, Ibrahim al-Taher, Mohammed Nufal, Muammar al-Aywa, and Mohammed al-Khalidi, while they were sitting in a tent housing journalists near Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza. Israeli forces have also executed journalists at close range, such as when Israeli sniper killed Said Abu Nabhan while he was working in central Gaza's Nusret area. While it is true that the assassination of journalists constitutes war crimes and crimes against humanity, this is due to the fact that under the laws of armed conflict, journalists are considered civilians, and it is illegal to deliberately target civilians. As journalists, however, they are not afforded any special protections despite the high risk to which their job exposes them. The drafters of these laws, most recently when formulating the 1977 additional protocols, the most robust body of law dealing with armed conflict, recognize the difference between civilians and journalists, understanding that the latter are frequently present on the front lines, yet inexplicably they fail to afford them with any additional protections beyond those already bestowed on civilians. The limited legal protections afforded to journalists leave them exposed to Israel's systematic targeting. Israel has been further emboldened, however, by Western media and the role it has played in undermining Palestinian journalists' professionalism and credibility. Israel has a long history of striving to defame Palestinian journalists and undermine their professionalism through its governmental and military Hezbollah units. And it has been using the government's advertising agency to produce YouTube ads claiming that journalists from Gaza are integral to Hamas propaganda and are accordingly legitimate targets. It is unclear whether such insidious campaigns have influenced Western media outlets or whether it is their own long-standing biases that shape the way they cover the assassination of Palestinian journalists, but they often do appear to simply be repeating Israel's fabrications. When Israel killed Middle East Eye journalists Mohammed Salama and Ahmed Abu Aziz along with Reuters photojournalist Hussein El-Masri and freelancers Muaz Abu Taha and Mariam Daga at Nasser Hospital. This is about this letter, right? For instance, Western news agencies, including the Associated Press and Reuters, whose own reporters were killed in the attack, repeated Israel's claim that it had targeted a Hamas camera, thereby casually associating the 5 journalists Israel had killed with Hamas. The neologism Hamas camera was undoubtedly formulated by Israel, and yet scores of media outlets repeated the phrase without pausing to ask what a Hamas camera, as opposed to a Nikon or a Canon camera, might be. The mere repetition of this phrase helps legitimize the deliberate attack on journalists, an attack, it is crucial to remember, carried out on a hospital complex where medical staff and patients were also killed. And you'll be talking about that soon, probably. This strike was executed over a year and 10 months into the genocide. By then, it was evident that Israel was methodologically targeting journalists, having already killed over 200 media workers, often along with their families. Moreover, it is highly unlikely that major Western media outlets would have aped Israel's legitimizing narratives had white European journalists been killed on the rooftop of Nasser Hospital. What is clear, as Chris Hedges points out, is that such narratives discredit the voices of the victims and exonerate the killers, reinforcing the impunity that enables and the continued targeting of Palestinian journalists. The accusation that Palestinian journalists are ideologically motivated and cannot be objective comes from media outlets that circulated insidious reports about beheaded babies and babies cooked in ovens. It comes from the outlets that repeated the lie about the existence of a central command center under Al-Shifa Hospital, and the false accusation that Palestinian journalists directed Hamas rocket units from the rooftops of hospitals. Indeed, dehumanizing Palestinians helps normalize not only genocide, but also the incitement to commit genocide that Israeli journalists have spewed from day one. Already on October 7, 2023, Shimon Rikli from Channel 4 wrote that Gaza has to be wiped off from the face of the earth, and later rhetorically asked, why exactly do we have an atomic bomb? A few days later, Naved Romi, who used to be my student, also worked in Channel 4 and is 14 and is now an anchor on I-24 News, rhetorically quipped on the television program The Patriots. There are no innocents. In 48, they brought the Nakba on themselves. Now they will have a second, real Nakba, to finish Ben-Gurion's work. She had already agitated for another Nakba months before October 2023's onslaught, and reiterated the same call a year later, declaring that Palestinians had brought upon themselves a bigger Nakba, and that we hope this time they have learned their lesson. Roy Sharon, a correspondent on Channel 11, explicitly justified the prospect of 1 million bodies. I spoke about 1 million bodies not as a goal. I said that in order to finally eliminate the military capabilities of Hamas, including Sinwar and death, we need 1 million bodies. Then let there be 1 million bodies. Arnon Segal, who writes for newspaper Makor Rishon, was not at all apologetic, publishing a map where he explained, this is how we will return to Gaza. The full plan for destroying the enemy, liberating the Gaza Strip, and establishing Jewish cities there. And in Mako magazine, Tomer Kimmerling wrote, who's coming to dance in Gaza? Gaza will disappear, and I'll dance there the way I have never danced before. Some Israeli journalists also directly incited against counterparts in Gaza. Chagai Segal, the former editor-in-chief of Makor Rishon, wrote, "All the journalists in Gaza are Hamas operatives or supporters, fabricators of blood libels. Perhaps there are few people in Gaza wearing press vests who in their hearts somewhat disapprove of Hamas, but even they are not deserving of the Journalist Association's protection." I-24 News Arab affair analyst Dia Cheskeli explained that if Israel has decided to eliminate the journalists, better late than never. Such statements amount to direct and public incitement to commit genocide, an act punishable under Article 3 of the 1951 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Genocide Convention. In a similar vein, Article 925 of the 1998 Rome Statute provides that a person who orders, solicits, or induces the commission of crimes, or directly and publicly incites others to commit genocide, bears individual criminal responsibility. Precedent exists for holding Israeli journalists and other media outlets accountable for such incitement. In the propaganda trials, the German publicist Julius Stricher was found guilty for inciting to murder and exterminate Jews in his newspaper Der Stromer, and convicted by the Nuremberg trial in 1946. Similarly, in 2003, the International Criminal Tribunal of Rwanda convicted 3 media leaders for direct and public incitement to commit genocide. Speaking to the defendants, the Chief Justice explained that without a firearm, machete, or any physical weapon, you caused the death of thousands of innocent civilians, while emphasizing that their broadcasts and publications could not be protected under the right to freedom of expression. Despite Israel's attempt to cast Palestinian journalists as insiders to violence, the great and tragic irony, as the Judge Klein in the Rwanda case highlights, is that a not insignificant number of Israeli journalists are, in reality, guilty of precisely this crime. It is therefore time for each and every signatory to the Geneva Conventions and the Genocide Convention to ensure that those journalists and their media managers inciting to genocide are held accountable by arresting them when they travel abroad, prosecuting them in national courts which have universal jurisdiction. Yet we have seen instead is how numerous media outlets have been undermining the credibility of those who bear witness to Israel's crime, while at times also facilitating the transformation of journalism into a vehicle that aids and abets genocide and crimes against humanity. Thank you.